Hey everybody, coming up, Oberlin College Bullies Bakery, free lunch for all, fining parents of school bullies, C.S. Lewis and Beavers, and an interview with the CEO of Parler, next on The Dr. Duke Show. Hey everybody, coming up, Oberlin College Bullies Bakery, free lunch for all, fining parents of school bullies, C.S. Lewis and Beavers, and an interview with the CEO of Parler, next on The Dr. Duke Show. Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Duke, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Hey, it just dawned on me that the show's named after me. Every week, Katie and I cover those stories impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Greetings to all of our faithful listeners. If you haven't done so, please consider subscribing to the podcast on iTunes or SoundCloud or anywhere else you can get podcasts. It's absolutely free. And I encourage you to follow us on Parler. Parler is the next generation Twitter. Parler is a Jack Dorsey free, speak your mind Twitter, right? So please consider signing up for that. That's what we need. Coming up later in the show, we have an interview with the CEO of Parler to give you a sense of why conservatives, Christians, libertarians, and liberals who like free speech, all two of you, should sign up for Parler. So make sure you sign up and follow me at Duke Pesta at Parler, at Katie at Parler, and at FreedomProject at Parler. And then stick around because we're going to go back to the archives and look at one of our presidential minute videos. We had such wonderful response last week, Katie, from the video programming we're doing. We'll show you the presidential minute, and as it sounds, where we devote 1 minute of video time to all of the American presidents. Do you actually think when the day comes, we'll be able to get the first 3 years of Donald Trump into a minute?
I think you can get the first 3 years into one word. Huge.
Huge. Not huge.
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 Anyway, our first story today comes from Oberlin College. I'm from Ohio originally, and I'll tell you, Oberlin College is the walking definition of a smug, stupid, insular, overpriced, $55,000 a year in tuition, stupid little liberal arts college that thinks it's some kind of cutting-edge transformational school in terms of the American culture. It is a preening, I'll use that word twice. It's a preening joke as far as education goes. To spend that kind of money on that kind of insulated little backroom education is pathetic. And here we find out why. Oberlin College has been ordered to pay $11 million to a local bakery for libel and emotional distress. The brief narrative is some students, Oberlin students, African-American kids, were going to the bakery. They were stealing. They were engaging in all kinds of raucous behavior. And so they were dealt with by the management, who tried to throw them out, tried to hold them accountable for their shoplifting, and to the surprise of nobody, the university blamed it on racism. One high-ranking university official even declared the bakery to be a hotbed of racial profiling. On university property, they made this, and she stood outside the bakery when the protest happened, the inevitable Oberlin College student protest happened, with a bullhorn screaming that the bakery and the bakery owners were racist. And so now, as we had with biology professor Weinstein, yes, in Evergreen College on the West Coast, when the courts get involved with this, the stupidity of these universities and colleges is redressed with extreme prejudice. $11 million they're going to have to pay to this bakery, and that's just the start, because there's possibly a much higher amount of money coming soon.
Yeah, I think this is kind of poetic justice, because this entire nightmare that the bakery's been going through happened the day after Donald Trump was elected president. So since that time, since the basically attempted robbery, stealing of the alcohol happened, the Gibsons bakery, the family, has been involved with this. And so what makes me question everything is the fact that this happened not on campus specifically, not within, the school classroom or anything dealing with Oberlin College specifically, but they decided to get so involved with it. And now what's happening, you talked about the $11.2 million that they've been awarded, but it's not over yet, because even though the jury awarded the Gibsons family this amount of money, the trial is actually still going on, and so they could actually have to pay more money. Donica Thomas Varner is Oberlin's vice president, general counsel, and the secretary for the college. And she decided, after the verdict came out, to send a community-wide email criticizing the decision. And now, according to Cornell Law School professor William A. Jacobson, that attack basically on the jurors, saying how disappointed she was, could mean that Oberlin, since punitive damages have not yet been awarded, could have to pay another $22 million to the $11 million compensatory. The objective of any communications at this sensitive stage must be to first do no harm, according to Jacobson. So it's not over, and they're going to have to pay more, possibly.
You know as well as I do that they're just going to get Judge Smales, a graduate clearly of Oberlin College, and Spalding, his nephew, to write a big $30 million check to cover the cost of this, and then they'll raise tuition to $75,000 a year. But what really gets me here about Oberlin College, notice how quickly they go to victim blaming. This is the same college with all that social justice bona fides, all their radically lefty talking points, and yet what do they do when this poor bakery that was under assault by an institution like with the deep pockets of Oberlin, this is a little family bakery, right? It's not a very big place. It's a tiny little family bakery in a very small place. Oberlin's a very small place. Been around since 1885, right? And so what do? They attack not just the bakers, but now the justice has been done, they're attacking the jurors, right?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, since it's so confusing if you don't look at the full story, that you have an instance where you're at a little bakery and 3 people. At this time, you just know them not as students from Oberlin College. It doesn't say like they were wearing, T-shirts that said, I'm a student at Oberlin. But these 3 students engaged in shoplifting. And somehow a college gets involved. And unless you read the story and know what happened, you wouldn't understand and make that connection. But you had mentioned how Oberlin Dean of Students, Meredith Raimondo, she's the one who took part in the demonstrations. She used a bullhorn to shout that the Gibsons apparently were racist. Flyers were passed out. This is where the libel comes in, is the flyers were passed out that said the bakery is a racist establishment with a long account of racial profiling and discrimination. And the family, the Gibsons, in their lawsuit, alleged that the college actually suspended classes so that students could protest and provided the protesters with food and drinks. Now, what is so interesting to me is one of the people, one of the 3 students, the one who actually was the one who had the wine bottles and they dropped and busted, he actually admitted, he said, you know what, like looking back on it, I had a fake ID. I was trying to buy alcohol and then steal it. That's it was my fault. And then that in no way were the Gibsons being racist. Yeah. So he even admitted it, but still, no. They're racist.
It doesn't matter. The narrative is that African-American kids in a sleepy, stupid little liberal arts town, which is primarily white, can never possibly do anything wrong. Oberlin, going back to my Judge Smales analogy, my Caddyshack analogy, you got Oberlin College is Spalding. And Oberlin College is saying to this bakery, I'll have a donut, I'll have a cruller, I'll have a fritter. And a judge just stepped in and said, you'll get nothing like it.
Well, since we're talking about food, and now I'm hungry and I want to have lunch, did you know there's such a thing as lunch shaming? And it's just rampant across the nation. So now, coming home to Wisconsin here, we have a couple stories that are Wisconsin related. The first being this lunch shaming bill that is aiming to give all kids access to school meals. Now, the state assembly has put out a bill, AB 84, and it says it's guaranteeing that every child gets access to school breakfast and lunch programs, even if the parents can't pay for it, or even if the parents can pay for it.
That's the point, Katie.
Exactly.
The point is not that the kids that can't afford it aren't getting fed. The point is that to make those kids feel like they're not being treated as poor kids, we can't have these kids seem to recognize the fact that they're getting charity. And so consequently, we're going to feed rich kids too. Mm-hmm. That's our solution.
Yeah, so this is a bill, it's a bipartisan bill, and it's affecting all public, private, charter, and tribal schools. So basically every school that takes any sort of money.
So the state of Wisconsin is telling private schools that you have to conform to this, and that's why we've been warning you, Mom and Dad. Charter schools, private schools that take even 1 penny from state and federal schools are eventually going to have to conform.
So right now, every one of the 421 school districts in our state has its own policy. Because what do you know? Those schools know more about their students than, I don't know, anyone in Madison.
Local control, right?
What? I know.
Until, big liberal
comes in.
benefits like this have to be distributed.
All right, but let's just put this bill in. And the bill states that you must provide a meal that is of a similar quality to a free or reduced price meal, a quality meal is what they're calling it, to a pupil who requests such a meal, regardless of the pupil's ability to pay for the meal, and prohibits the governing body from providing a meal of inferior quality in place of a quality meal. So they keep talking about the quality. And the thing is, we already have in place the free or reduced meal system, but we're going to go on top of that. Now, if a pupil is homeless and is enrolled in a public school or an independent charter school, the school has to provide the quality meal at no cost to the pupil. And here's where everything that it prohibits. It prohibits publicly identifying or stigmatizing a pupil who's unable to pay for the meal. Obviously, you can't make them they actually wrote in the bill, you can't make them do chores to get this meal, or you can't throw away food. You can't talk to them directly concerning their ability to pay for this food, and you can't require a pupil or their parents or guardian to pay fees or costs charged by a collection agency involving this food.
So in other words, we want to feed your kids without any responsibility at all.
Absolutely.
Are they responsible? Are the kids allowed to chew this on their own? It blows me away, Katie, that leftists keep talking about shaming. Mm-hmm. Everything that may carry a stigma or shame has to be eradicated immediately. And how do they handle that? By doxing anybody who disagrees with them, right? By literally shaming people because of their views, their religious views, trying to shame Chick-fil-A, right? Body by Waffle Rice. Trying to shame Chick-fil-A because they donated to pro-life causes, pro-marriage causes, right? So everything about the progressive left is shaming. They don't have any ideas, the progressive left. They just try to shame their way into their worldview. And yet, one a great hypocrisy is that the strategy is to shame anybody who disagrees here.
Yeah. Here's the kicker, though. It's not just that you, as a parent, you decide, okay, I'm going to apply for this and let them know that I would need some sort of assistance. The bill actually says that the governing body of the school, so the school annually has to provide certain information regarding the application process, and say you didn't send it in, if they know the pupil is eligible for free or reduced price meals, but they've not submitted it, it says they must submit an application on the pupil's behalf. So there you go. You have the school taking care of the parenting and everything else for you.
Why don't you just give these kids and can we please get rid of the word pupil? It just creeps me out.
It's written out in
the word pupil.
pupil.
I mean, it has bogus eye connotations. It's almost like a larvae. The whole thing has got to go. You could call them students. That troubles me immensely.
That implies they're going to learn something.
Having a mother-in-law who has one eye, a glass eye, the whole thing just kind of creeps me out. I will say this, though. Why don't they just give one card that you can swipe to every single kid? And the kids who get free lunches, load that for every single free lunch for the course of a school year, load it on so that they can get exactly that many lunches. And then require the non-poverty kids to pay in advance for their lunches, right? And so everybody's got the same card, but you don't know whether the school has loaded money to it or the family has, right? Okay. And then whenever the card is swiped, you have no idea who's doing what.
Well, see, I want to go back to a time long, long ago when kids were actually held responsible for having the dollar bills in their pocket, and they had to exchange that for food if they wanted it. But now, because we can't have our kids be responsible for anything or have to care for anything else, everything is an account number, and that's where this thing is, your account. The kids have no idea how much money's on that account.
This is also the death of gratitude. It's the death of gratitude, because when we do charitable deeds, when we try to help kids who find themselves in poor circumstances, we can't acknowledge it, right? We can't ask those kids when they're giving a hand up to be grateful for it. That's unjust. It's inequitable, right? To have kids who are being assisted recognize that assistance, right? And to expect there to be some kind of an intellectual and a gratitudinal exchange, we now are banning that. This, by the way, this is socialism, guys, right? That the government will take care of every aspect of your kid's life. It's not enough to give your kids a bad public school education. Now we're going to give them bad Michelle Obama lunches, right? And breakfasts and dinners. And when they get them because they can't afford them, we can't let you know that. We can't let you know that we're helping kids who need help, because that's stigmatizing. What you're doing here is you are orienting society to believe everyone's entitled to everything and no one has to be grateful for it. Does that not sound like every progressive you know? We are entitled to everything, and we don't have to be grateful for it because you owe it to us. That is, in a nutshell, progressive thinking. And that's what you got going on in these schools.
And these kids have no understanding of what it is that they're eating. The fact that they put in this bill and they differentiate between what a quality meal is and an I don't even know what the terminology they use, but what a quality meal, any meal that you would get at a lunchroom, and I know I love my hot lunch, but I know a lot of people don't like hot lunch, is 1,000% better than a lot of kids are eating in Africa right now. We're not eating. So, and that goes to your gratitude point, is that we can't even be thankful that, wow, I get a PB&J sandwich, which of course peanut butter is now outlawed because of the allergies.
Peanut allergies,
and gluten is in there. But the fact that you get anything, and especially if you didn't pay for it, just a thank you.
And I go back to a point that I've made long ago. Why is it necessary for our public schools, who are struggling to educate our kids, who are not producing literate kids, who are depriving our kids of the kind of education they need to succeed in college and the world, why are we, every story here is all about spending on things that have nothing to do with schooling, right? We talk about how much money is being spent on sex education. We talk about all the money spent on sporting opportunities and all of the other stuff, and the fact that we have to feed your kids, the fact that we have to provide birth control for your kids, the fact that we have to take your little girls to get abortions if they need them underage without telling you. All of this stuff, the schools literally are becoming the families. And mom and dad, you better wake up. I mean, it's amazing how many, particularly younger moms and dads, love this. They love the idea that they don't have to pack a lunch. That they, as mom and dad, they don't have to plan what their kids are going to eat. They don't have to sacrifice themselves to make sure they can give their kids nutritious meals, because the school will do it.
Yeah, and it's not just during the school year anymore.
Even over the summers.
We have an example, and it's just one of, I guess, more than 240 in the state, where it's Columbus District, and Columbus is outside of Madison for anyone not...
Columbus, Wisconsin.
Yeah, Columbus, Wisconsin, or outside of Wisconsin. So the Columbus School District, they announced how they're doing a sponsorship with the Summer Food Service Program, SFSP, and it's funded by the USDA, and it's administered by our DPI, the Department of Public Instruction. So it's coming down from the feds and the state, and it means kids in Columbus School District get free meals all summer long. As long as you're under the age of 18, you get to go to the elementary or the middle school, and you're going to get fed all summer long. And Laura Austin, the District Food Services Director, said, "This program fills a void created when school lunches are not available. Helping parents meet the nutritional needs of their children is the strength of this program."
This isn't filling a void. This is the void. You're not even determining whether or not you need to feed these kids. You are basically telling wealthy parents, and I promise you, in Columbus, Wisconsin, been through it, the vast, vast, vast majority of Columbus, Wisconsin school kids are not starving and they're not hungry.
Well, and I looked it up. So Columbus is a small town, just like all the small towns across the state of Wisconsin. Their student population in the whole district is about 1,300. So you're looking at about 100 kids per class.
That's right.
In their high school. It's a rural community. There are a bunch of farmers, so the kids know how to get food.
Wait, the kids are leaving farms.
Well, the kids are leaving farms.
Let me just pause on this for a moment. The kids are actually leaving farms, where the primary responsibility of farms is to grow and produce food.
Or dairy, milk.
That's food, right? To be fed at taxpayer expense by the schools.
So in the summer of 2018, Wisconsin alone, so take a look at this, served 2.9 million meals at 965 sites, and that was, again, 240 sponsoring organizations. So mom and dad out there, here's how you take some action. Take a look at your school district. Is your school district participating in this? It's the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture. See if in your own state, in your own community, if they're participating in this. Because take a look at your own school district's budget and how much money is being allocated for food. See how much you're actually paying, because that's where you can start to fight back and raise it with the school board whether or not this should be happening.
The idea that there is this much food need, particularly in a place like Columbus, Wisconsin, the idea that there are so many kids that are just going without food unless the big authoritarian public school districts feed them is complete schlock.
Some more complete schlock is another happening in another Wisconsin city. It's the Wisconsin Rapids Common Council. They're going to take a look at a city ordinance to determine if you should be fining parents of students who are bullies. So you fine the parents if your kid is a bully. So they're going to actually consider next week the passage of an anti-bullying ordinance, and it would fine these parents. Police Chief Ermin Blevins said the ordinance would provide school administrators and police officers additional tools and could serve as a wake-up call to parents whose children are bullying others. In the ordinance, it says it prohibits bullying or harassment. It prohibits retaliation against any person who reports bullying or harassment, and it also holds parents and guardians responsible for such behavior of children younger than 18 years old.
Why are the schools not held responsible? If the schools feel they have a responsibility to feed your kids whether you need it or not. The schools feel the responsibility to teach your kids sex whether you want it to or not. The schools are going to teach your kids about transgenderism in elementary school whether you want them to or not. They are adopting more and more of what you do, and they're not even asking your permission anymore, and they're not letting you opt out of it. So when it comes to bullying, note what happens here. This isn't a school problem. Everything else is a school problem. But this is a mom problem, right? So given that the kids are at school 7-8 hours a day, they're being fed there, they're learning their morality, they're learning their sexuality, they're learning tolerance from a progressive point of view at the schools. Explain to me why, in this case, it's not the school's fault.
But remember what Arnie Duncan once said.
Oh, Arnie Duncan.
I think our schools should be open 12, 13, 14 hours a day. So it's not just lengthening.
So 8 to 8 or something like that?
Yes, and let me tell you what, not just lengthening obviously the school day, but a wide variety of after-school activities, drama, arts, sports, chess, debate, academic enrichment, programs for parents, GED, ESL, family literacy nights, potluck dinners. At home, we attached healthcare clinics to about 24 of our schools. Where schools truly become the centers of the community, great things happen.
This is what we've said for many, many years, that the school now, this huge network of federally funded schools in all the states, the former Department of Education Secretary for Barack Obama wants those to be the centers of the community, not the local family home, not the local police department, not the local civic government. The center of every community in America, say the progressives, has to be the federal school. And that's where your kids are going to learn about sex. That's where your kids are going to lose their religion. That's where your kids are going to get fed what we think they should be fed. But you get blamed if they're bullies. The biggest bullies in the public schools are the public schools.
Yeah. Well, parents, if your kid is the bully, just so you know, they're going to start off with a written warning. Okay. But then it's going to graduate quite quickly. Your first offense is going to be $50, and then additional costs, so your kid bullies again, it's $313. I don't know how they come up with these numbers.
And so when you find this family $313 for bullying, that means they have to get on the school lunch program to be able to compensate for that.
Ah, that's where it comes from.
It's the circle of progressive life, right?
It makes so much sense to me.
The sausage goes in one way and you push it out the other.
Exactly.
And then you eat the sausage when you pushed it out. That's how these schools operate. And the thing about this all is when you think about the audacity of this, right? That we are literally transforming American public schools, not just into the centers of the communities, but the moral, ethical, and parental sites. This is the place where our children are being reared now. And it is really staggering how many moms and dads think they're getting away with something. Oh, wow. I'm getting, and you inevitably, for those families who can't afford to feed their kids, right? Those families are receiving food stamps. Mm-hmm. So why aren't we, if we're going to feed them breakfast, lunch, and dinner all summer long, why can't we take the food stamps away? I mean, why can't we? Because there can be no entitlement. The entitlement is never ending, right? So mom gets the single mother gets all the food stamps and the assistance, and now she doesn't have to feed the kids, but she's got all that food stamp money. Oh, yeah. And so why are we doing that then? Shouldn't then the mother have to turn over a significant portion of her food stamp allotment back to the school to cover this? But no, that's not how big liberal government works.
Yeah, just a little anecdote here. Some people are well-intentioned with those food stamps, but I see the same people trying to buy caramel apples and pumpkins, not to eat, but to carve with their food stamps, and that is not allowed. Well, the pumpkin part is, but the caramel apple part isn't. But they try, and then they get mad at me when I am not allowed to give them that.
A few years back, 4 or 5 years now, I was working at a Quick Trip. Besides teaching at the university to make some extra money, university professors really don't make that much money, but then again, most of us don't deserve it anyway. So I was working at a Quick Trip, which is a convenience store, and I never forget it. On a Friday night, a couple of young kids came in with their mother's SNAP card, food stamp card. And these two boys, right, and they met up with two other boys. So there were 4 of them, and one kid had his mother's SNAP card. They bought about $250 worth of Gatorade and candy bars and Red Bull. And when I went and swiped this, right, when I found out what the debit was, not only did they spend that money, but there was like $1,400 still on that card for 1 month. These kids were perfectly healthy. They had best leather tennis shoes. They all had cell phones on them. Yeah, that's the kind of culture we've got now, where poverty is buying $250 worth of Red Bull and Gatorade on your mother's SNAP card and not even making a dent in the monthly percentage. And yet, the way the progressives would have you believe, these kids are starving to death in the streets.
Yeah, so mom and dad, again, if you want to know what's happening in your own community, all you have to do is go to your local municipality and ask them if there's an ordinance on the books about this bullying, because it's happening in a lot of small town communities across our state, and it's been picking up steam across the nation. So you might actually have an ordinance on the books. So to make sure, your kid doesn't come home one day and say, guess what, Mom and Dad, you owe $313. Find out if it's happening.
Yeah, and another solution, Mom and Dad, is to rebel, to simply not let your kids participate in the so-called free food, right? Pack them a lunch every day, right? Teach your kids responsibility. Teach them gratitude.
All right, well, earlier today, Dr. Duke had the opportunity to sit down with the CEO and co-founder of Parler, a new social media platform that has taken the world by storm for its commitment to free speech. Popular conservative voices have been making the jump to Parler, and Dr. Duke wanted to find out why.
Joining me today is John Mates, co-founder and CEO of Parler, a new and very needed social media platform. John, let's just start off with the name. I had enough high school French to know that you were probably going for parlay, but have you moved to Parler to make it easier for people?
Yeah, we pivoted into Parler in about December. I kind of like the throwback to the French word to speak, which is where we came from. And the French history with us, the Statue of Liberty, everything, it felt fitting to me. But we take what we end up pivoting to. So
this is a really important thing. You are basically going to challenge the market of Twitter. You're going to provide your own version of a platform like Twitter to allow people to engage in actual speech. How is your platform actually different from Twitter, in what meaningful ways?
Well, there's a lot of different ways, right? I mean, the general premise here is that Twitter is what I would call a centralized platform. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It is what it is. And in my opinion, that makes them more of a publisher. And by centralized, I mean everything revolves around Twitter. So all of the content, it's their responsibility to filter and keep the community safe for their users. Now, we, on the other hand, are more what I would call decentralized. Not in the software sense, but in the sense that whatever people say, everyone else has the right to remove that speech from their view. They have a moderation panel where people can approve and deny and mute comments. And by mute, what we mean is the person creating the comment doesn't know you've erased it, but you have. Same with, so you basically, as a user, have all the power that the social media normally has to control your own environment. And that's really the big differentiator. And going forward, we want to continue with that spirit to offer publications and also influencers tools to make money with us, not us make money off them.
Right. It sounds like it's very user-friendly. I guess the big question first is, with billions and billions of users using Twitter, Facebook, it's the devil they know, so to speak. What plans do you have to begin to capture more of those audiences other than their own fecklessness in how they're treating their customers?
Yeah, I mean, right now they seems to be, shooting themselves in the foot, which has given us a lot of audience at the moment. To me, it really is a shame what they're doing, because it's against, kind of the core principle of the United States, which is, freedom of speech, the ability to discuss things with one another. And in my opinion, what they're doing is dividing America even more. I mean, everybody in the mainstream media likes to talk about how there's a big divide and division among people in the United States. And I think social media is a huge component of that.
Let's say, for the sake of argument, Parler gets as big as we hope it's going to get. You supersede Twitter in the next couple of years. We'd love to see that happen. And then you have an open platform where many, many particularly conservatives gravitate to you away from the other social media sites. Will you then be careful about what kind of speech do you have any plans then to be a primarily conservative network? Or are you going to let liberals and conservatives in all walks of life speak their truths and not involve yourself?
Yes, we have a large Republican base right now. I'm not even a Republican. I'm a libertarian. I like having discussions with both sides, and I really want to see the left jump on here. I think, in my opinion, by not banning people for their political views, by not banning people for saying something offensive necessarily, that people can bridge that gap and start having meaningful discussion to bring this country forward. You have two polar opposites right now, and really people need to actually have that discussion and figure out, okay, where does the reality lie here? Where do people actually sit? That's the kind of discussion I really enjoy. And I think when you come on the platform, you can see it too yourself. I mean, we had a very left-leaning writer with CBS join. I shouldn't speak because I don't actually know how left leaning he is, but I just assumed. And he was welcomed very much by our base. There's a lot of comments on his first post that says, welcome to this platform. We really look forward to what you're going to say. So I really like that it's going to be a platform for both people, both sides of the spectrum, to actually get together and talk.
Well, as you know, with the Steven Crowder things that's going on right now and all the other things they're demonetizing, we'll talk about monetization in a moment. But what's happening, obviously, on Twitter and Facebook is when progressive listeners and viewers get offended by conservative speech, they start flagging. And what we know now, they've basically confirmed, is that when progressives flag, YouTube acts. When conservatives flag, no one acts. So how do you plan to keep that neutrality? Let's say you get your wish, and this is open to everyone, and then let's, for the sake of argument, argue that the same progressives who are on Twitter now join Parler, and they're screaming and shouting at you in all sorts of virtual ways that they're not safe, they're being harassed. How do you handle that?
Well, we've given them the tools to take themselves out of those conversations. So if they don't want to be a part of it, they have a moderation menu where they can go in there and filter out the comments they don't like, and they can just erase them from their platform, just from them, just their profile. And then on top of that, what we've done too is we're creating something called verification. We call it real user verification. So people can get a badge that says that they're a real user, they're a real person and not a bot, and this is their primary account. And so you can communicate solely with those kind of people. So when you actually do take action against them and you say, I don't want this person commenting on my profile or my posts, they're actually gone for good because they can only get verified one time with that name, with that identity. And so from that perspective, it creates an environment where people can't just spin up these bots and start trolling it. Now, I'm sure unverified, it'll be easy to spin up bots just like it is on Twitter. But if you restrict yourself to only communicating with those people, we don't have to succumb to any pressure. It's up to you to do that. It's up to the user to create that environment so we can live up to the true ideals of this country. And by that, I mean your profile is your living room, right? You can invite people over to talk. You can let anybody in and talk. And then as soon as you don't like them, you have the right to boot them out and get them out of there.
Yeah, and what's great about that, very libertarian, is what you want is a level playing field for everybody, right? Everybody has the same rights. Everybody has the same responsibilities. And the big problem we're having now with people like Crowder, they're generously going to allow Crowder to continue to exist. They're not going to make any money. So talk about your plans. How are you going to monetize? What is going to be your structure here? How are you going to make money? And then how are you going to let people, very popular people on your site, make money?
So what we're planning on doing is not targeting people and randomly placing ads in people's feeds or anywhere on the site. We're planning on specifically matching the advertiser with the user who they believe has a good audience. Think of like television, right? I mean, that's the model that we're going for, television and radio rather than targeted ads, which targeted ads also require trading and selling user information, which is also against what we stand for. We want to create social media where people actually feel like they have some privacy.
John, last question, kind of a fun one. When do you think Donald Trump makes the leap from Twitter and Facebook over to Parler? Have you had any conversations with his people?
I have not actually spoken to them about any of that. I will speak probably to them once we hit 1 million users. That's my goal. Well,
let's get you there sooner than later. We really support what you're doing. The country needs what you guys are up to, and anything we can do to help, let us know. John Mates, co-founder and CEO of Parler. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. I've got an account on Parler now. We have one for Freedom Project Academy and for Freedom Project Media. We'll do everything we can to push this. We need those voices so we all have a fair shot. Thanks, John.
Well, the timing couldn't be more perfect to remind all of you that you are special and that we need you to continue spreading the word on The Dr. Duke Show by liking, commenting, and sharing each and every episode on whatever platform you prefer, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Parler. And we encourage you to give Parler a shot, create an account, and then follow Freedom Project, Duke Pesta, and don't forget, please, little me, Katie. And don't forget the audio podcast. Thanks to you, we are actually growing in the rankings, but if you aren't subscribed to the podcast, please consider doing so. It will send you a reminder every time we post a show. And finally, subscribe to our Friday e-blast. Everyone can do it. Simply visit freedomproject.com /subscribe and put in your email. It's that simple. We're going to send you just one email every Friday afternoon to keep you updated on all the stories and videos that we produce each and every week.
I know it seems like overkill to ask you to subscribe to us in so many places, but as we've said to you before, Facebook, Twitter, they are becoming absolutely mercenary in what we're allowed to say on their platforms here. And so we've got to find alternatives. Just last week, they flagged us because we had an article that actually had the word transgender in the title. It was a simple reporting article, but they saw that word, and within 5 seconds of posting, they had banned the story, right? It's remarkable. So we just want to make sure that you are staying connected to us in ways other than Facebook, and that's why Parler is so important. In fact, I have a little jingle. Parler, 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 you let me have my say. Parler, 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 with you I will stay. Hey! Copyright infringement on the dreidel song. I apologize to those who created and sing the song about the dreidel in our Jewish friends, but I borrowed the little ditty.
I am embarrassed for you, and I apologize on behalf
Parler, you let me have my say. Parler, 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 with you I shall say.
Hey!
Hava, Nakila, Hava.
Well,
Suddenly we broke out into Tevye.
you know, I was in Fiddler on the Roof.
You were? What did you play?
Okay, I played a couple roles,
Did you
but
play the cat?
no, I played one of the young boys.
Yes, you did.
But then I got to be one of the Russian bottle dancers, and we didn't tape the bottles. I actually had to scoot across the stage.
Did you learn how to
with
do
the bottle.
that?
Yeah. Didn't drop a
Nice.
bottle once. Not once. Boom. Well, let's move on to, I think, my favorite story possibly in all the history of the Dr. Duke show, and I will not be able to maintain composure at all. But I will try my darndest. An environmentalist is blasting Narnia about beavers. So we have to talk about beavers, and it's just been a tragedy. Environmentalists blasted C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia, in case you haven't heard of it before, for miseducating the public about beavers for all these years. The Daily Wire reports that Ben Goldfarb is on a crusade to reintroduce the mighty beaver to Great Britain and is finding that the Chronicles of Narnia, which features a married beaver couple, named appropriately Mr. and Mrs. Beaver, is standing in his way. In Lewis's iconic tale of Fantasyland access through the back of a magical wardrobe, the beaver pair is depicted as sharing a hot fish supper with some of the book's human characters. But in real life, beavers, Goldfarb says, don't eat fish. They have a strictly, I can't do it, herbivorous diet, despite the fact that they live in mostly fish-friendly areas.
Fish and chips.
Goldfarb says, they're totally herbivorous. That's one of the funny things about beaver reproduction in the UK. Every British schoolchild reads Narnia, and they grow up thinking that beavers are going to eat all the fish. That is biologically inaccurate, he told an audience over the weekend at a speech introducing his new book on beaver-friendly environmentalism, Eager, The Surprising Secret Life of Beavers and Why They Matter.
I have been around many children, and I have never known one who actually thought that there were flying elephants. I have been around many children who have read the Chronicles of Narnia, and nowhere on their little intellectual radar screen is the fact that talking beavers eating fish are going to destroy the ecosystem of fish. Never, not at all, not at all, not even once. And so you have an invite to cop a phrase from Rush Limbaugh. You have an ultra wackadoodle environmentalist wacko who is now arguing that the plight of the beaver, or that beavers may have been driven to extinction, even though it happened long before in England, long before Lewis wrote his Chronicles of Narnia. But the fact that beavers haven't made a return is because apparently we've got generation of English school kids who are now on beaver watch. And when they see beavers, they apparently stomp them to death because they think that those beavers are going to eat all the fish. This is how environmentalists think. This right here is the kind of thing that will get some UK member of parliament to pass a law banning C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia in government schools. You watch, within the next year, that's going to happen.
Well, Goldfarb says that the misconception, or in this case, miseducation, is responsible for beavers dying out across the UK. Children who grow up thinking beavers eat fish, he claims, believe they'll be competing with the beavers for food. And when conservation programs talk about reestablishing the British beaver population, people panic, fearing that it will mean the extinction of fish species.
Right. So on the one hand, kids are going to choose slimy fish over cuddly little beavers. Do we really actually believe that the response of a typical English youth is going to be, oh my God, that fuzzy little creature with the odd tail? That's not really an English
It was kind of Australian.
Mate.
Mate.
Anyway,
Fish and chips.
that the response of the kid is going to be that we have to stomp the beavers to protect the fish.
Yeah. What I like about this entire thing is the fact that if the UK people are watching the Chronicles of Narnia, and the biggest worry they have is that they think that beavers eat fish. They if that's their focus, not that we have children going through the back of a wardrobe into this magical fantasy land, that we have beavers talking, that they're being served by with
it's not the talking
part.
It's not the talking
part.
beaver thing that's irrational.
No,
it's the fact that
what they're
beavers
eating.
eat fish. And I'll go one step further, if I may. What this really is a backdoor run for this environmentalist to try to convince kids to be vegetarians.
It's a back wardrobe run.
A back wardrobe run to try to convince these little kids not about the dangers of fish eating beavers. It's to convince little kids that eating fish at all is the problem. If you eat fish as an adult, if you as a human being eat fish, you're going to destroy fish and you will contribute to the extermination of beavers. That's what this wackadoodle's saying. And given what you know about the PETA left, is it surprising?
No, not in the least.
But again, look at what they're doing. They're going after an 80-year-old children's book. I mean, they're going after something so simple, and they're drawing huge environmental conclusions about it. There are no beavers because C.S. Lewis invented a fish-eating one, right? This is what global warming alarmism is based on.
Let's move on to our final story because it was the end of the school year and the end of every college semester. Students get to take fill out their course evaluations. You've had this happen to you a time or two.
Oh, yeah.
Talk to us about course evaluations.
So course evaluations, they're largely worthless to begin with because they're subjective. At the end of the semester, we go through this dog and pony show where we pass out an evaluation sheet to students and they fill in bubbles or they make comments. But this is really kind of silly now. Well, the argument that these kids are making this is Charlotte Houston, a student at the University of Washington, is now she wrote an editorial for The Daily, the campus newspaper, in which she says that we start, instead of evaluating teachers on things like, do they show up for class, can you understand them, are they student friendly when it comes to their policies, instead of the business of the classroom. What now they want to do is to give students evaluations that determine whether or not the professor made the student feel safe, respected, and represented.
Yes.
Safe, respected, and represented. The fact that you're there is representation. The fact that you're a college kid and treated like one is respect. And the fact that nobody's ever been hijacked in a college classroom and had their purse stolen pretty much guarantees that you're safe. But that's not how progressives mean safe, respected. Tell us, Katie, in your mind, what does safe, respected, and represented mean to progressive wackadoodles?
It means you better agree with everything that I feel is appropriate. And if you say anything that I don't believe to be true or that it may offend someone, then it is not a safe, I'm not respected, and I am definitely not represented.
The facts that you're paid to teach, whether you're a biology professor, the truth you're paid to teach, if it's literature, the chemistry, the science you're paid to teach, if you're a scientist, if those facts get in the way with me, my identity, my idea of myself, what makes me happy, what I want, what I think, what I feel, you have violated me somehow, and we should be able to take it out on you in your evaluations.
Yeah, and didn't she say something specifically? She was in a biology class. Mm-hmm. She opined within her being in a biology class about how the professor used the terms gender and sex, and she felt angry and distressed by the misinformation and confusion my apparently well-respected professor was seeding in the students around me. The professor's alleged misapplication of the term could make many of his students feel invisible or unrepresented.
Invisible or unrepresented. So a biology professor is not allowed to use the words biology and gender in a biological context anymore. He has to use it the way this particular student wants to. And by the way, if the biology professor started saying unbiological things, I guarantee you there would be other students who would tag that biology professor for ignoring the business of the class. So what these little snowflakes are trying to tell you is there is no fact, there is no truth, there is no scientifically verified issue, there is no opinion that can stand if it contradicts something that I think and feel. And what this is a recipe for disaster, because 25 kids sitting in a classroom, 50 kids sitting in a classroom, they're all going to have different opinions about everything. So at that point, because the professor doesn't make everyone feel the same sense of security about every issue, he is guilty. Everything he says, every statement, every scientific fact, every mathematical proof he tries to teach is going to offend somebody, because it can't possibly make everybody feel good, particularly people like this who are in denial about what biology is.
Yeah, but she's a psychology major.
Oh, well, there you
so
go.
So she knows everything there is. Mm-hmm. Her lead actually started speaking to exactly what you knew she was going to get into. She says, filling out course evaluations can often be my favorite part of a class.
I bet. When you get to evaluate the evaluator, I'm sure that is.
Exactly.
And it's apparently the only part of the class she pays any attention to.
And then she says, I think I'm in the minority of people, so she's a minority right there, of people who diligently fill out one for nearly all my professors. As a psychology major, I have a deep-seated respect for good data. and usually it's pretty standard stuff. I feel bad if she's a psychology major, not that she'll go on and actually get her doctorate and become, a psychologist. But if she does, if her patient says anything that contradicts what she believes, then how is she going to handle all the
Let's be clear. Psychology is a social science. It's not a science. It's not one of the hard sciences. And like all the social sciences, sociology, anthropology, psychology, it's been completely infected by social justice nonsense, right? And so to be a student of psychology in a modern university is to be a social justice warrior. It is not to be a student of psychology, right? Because, well, psychology is the premise that we can know something meaningful based on data about the human psyche. And these social justice warriors are telling you it's not true. That biology doesn't matter, that chemistry doesn't matter, brain chemistry doesn't matter. None of this stuff matters. What matters is my opinion of what I am whenever I decide that I am it. And so the entire premise of her psychology education is basically to destroy whatever is scientific. That little bit of science that goes along with psychology is destroyed by it now.
Yeah. We had such a great response last week to debuting one of our new video series that, you know what? We're going to debut another one. This one is called the Presidential Minute. And the videos go fast, as in about a minute and a half. But when we created these, the goal was to appeal to our kids who had short attention spans. So here you go. We're going to kick off our Presidential Minute series with a little story about a man named George.
Let me tell you a little story about a man named George Washington. Born in Virginia on February 22nd, 1732, he would become the only president to receive every electoral vote. A very tall man, Washington began his military career at 20 years old, joining up with the Virginia militia. At 26, he married Martha Custis and helped raise her 2 children. By his 40s, George was earning his stripes, commanding troops of the Continental Army to victory in the Revolutionary War. In 1789, he was chosen as America's first president. During that time, he helped create the first presidential cabinet system and national bank. Today, Washington's image can be seen on Mount Rushmore, the dollar bill, and quarter. He has his own monument, the tallest in D.C. America's national capital is named after him, as well as a state, the only one to be named after an American president. On December 14, 1799, while checking his farms in the freezing rain, George Washington developed pneumonia and died at the age of 67. And there you go, a little story about a man named George.
Now it's time for Extra Credit, this week brought to you by Keep Your Stupid Trophies. Participation trophies are given for basically everything nowadays, but a teacher at Bailey Preparatory Academy in Indiana should have kept his trophies to himself. Instead, the teacher decided to give 11-year-old Achilles, an autistic student, the Most Annoying Male Award at a school luncheon. Achilles is nonverbal and will often rock back and forth to express himself. Achilles' father, Rick, says he was grateful his son didn't understand what was going on and that his son was just excited because he got a shiny gold star. But Rick rightfully wants an apology. And there will be plenty more on this topic on this week's Healthy Republic because let's just say I have a few things to say.
And we need to look into this, but I'll bet you the most annoying male award, I promise you there's probably no most annoying female.
Since we're giving away trophies and awards, the Dumb Criminal Award goes to an alleged Antifa member named Ezra Benner, who attempted to lock conservative students in a University of Washington classroom. The final meeting of the UW College Republicans caught the attention of the Emerald City Antifa group, who encouraged members to disrupt the meeting. Well, Ezra showed up and very poorly attempted to put chains around the door handles to the room. When the noise on the door was immediately heard by the students inside, they rushed the door to open it. Ezra ran away scared, but was quickly caught up to. He faces disorderly conduct, but is lucky he won't have to worry about being locked up because they'd clearly do a better job at it than he did.
Well, the nice thing, soy boy protesters can't run very fast. They don't have very developed quadriceps, right? But the point here is that we've seen bleach thrown at conservative speeches on college campuses. We've seen fire alarms pulled to disrupt them. We had one group of progressive kids try to burn down the dorm room door of a college Republican, and now we're locking them in, right?
And finally, we will hand out a Safe Space Award to a student senator at Santa Clara University for claiming at the May student government meeting that the Young America's Foundation is harmful to minority students. And the student government went along with the nonsense, thereby denying official recognition of the club, which is well known around the country for one of its principal speakers, the ever so frightening, ever so intimidating Benjamin Shapiro. This is actually the second time that the YAF chapter at Santa Clara has been denied recognition. So, fingers crossed, third time's a charm.
Yeah, and so Ben Shapiro, or any conservative speaker, is offensive to minorities. Notice what we've done. We have completely dumbed down the definition of offensive. In other words, anybody who simply disagrees with me as a progressive is